I am so abundantly ashamed that my industry continues to play a part and a cog in this machine. Let's get into it.
Says he's a girl, targets a school, targets his family, homicidal, suicidal, lots of warning, totally predictable.
Let's look into the latest, what they're calling the ice rink massacre, and why being a therapist now is harder than ever.
He had responded, I think, to Kevin Sorbo once, actually, on X, said, keep bashing us, because Kevin Sorbo, the conservative actor, said that transgenderism isn't real. This guy responded a while ago, said, keep bashing us, but do not wonder why we go berserk.
Yesterday at an ice rink in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, one trans-identifying individual took the lives of several people in the crowd, which used to be his ex-wife and possibly one of his stepchildren. And while this doesn't seem to be an outlier, it is indicative of what continues to happen with certain identifying individuals and the proneness to violence, the proneness to want to take out frustrations on a public that is often unsuspecting must continue to be looked at. And the cognitive dissonance that I have to arrive at as being a therapist and still maintaining my role in an industry that is so complicit in this has led me down a dark path the last 5 years. And it's really sad to me that so many unwitting therapists were simply trained to just affirm, and it has led down the road to turning out that a lot of times even that affirmation is not enough to stave off behaviors that, end with people losing their lives. And while that doesn't necessarily just happen among one group of people, it is certainly seeming like a pattern where this continues to be a quick trigger point, a hairpin trigger that continues to be detrimental to society, and it continues to put good therapists like me in a place of being ashamed. I'm ashamed of my industry, and I'm ashamed that so many people from the APA to the WHO just went along to get along and just went with what was politically expedient and what was ideologically driven in our industry. And the WPATH files from that all the way till this violence that continues to happen is all an indication that we need to rethink and reinstitute some common sense, especially in this particular area of transgender medicine, if there ever were such a thing. It needs to be re-examined. It needs to be politically looked at. It needs to be done with rigor and actual research and scientific debate instead of just being told what you should say as a therapist and just going with it automatically. I'm concerned that the next trend will be that whether it's children that want to be animals or whether it's adults that want to, have their limbs amputated for reasons of combining cyborg technology with human technology. All of those things are actually happening. And then also the medical assist in what. All of those things are happening. And my industry is driving quite often the Overton window in the most far left-wing direction to try to assert themselves as within these therapeutic appointments, making political points and scoring political points for socialism, for left-wing ideologues, and for the APA, although I repeat myself.
We need to have a serious conversation about mental health. Rather than just target these poor trans people, we need to talk about mental health. That's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to talk about. Because the mental health problem they have is they think they're the opposite sex. And that goes along with extreme narcissism, violence, violent tendencies, and suicidality. Like every time. Every time.
So yesterday, some gentleman named Robert Dorgan, who was going by the alias Roberta Esposito, who was a 56-year-old identified transgender male who had undergone reassignment surgery years earlier, went by female names, and he went into carrying out an act that involved a pew-pew on his ex-wife and potentially her stepchild. Two were their lives were taken. And it was reportedly the shooter's son's mother and a sibling or another family member. 3 others were critically injured, including a family friend plus the shooter himself. Now, the targeted family members had long-standing disputes with the person using the pew-pew, and he opened fire within the stands. Some heroic individuals attempted to stop it, but it is being called the ice rink massacre or hockey rink shooting in headlines, especially with the dramatic bystander heroics. So credit to all those who stepped in. This continues to be the way that we begin to disarm these things in real time in public. And if we don't make our schools hard targets, if we don't make our public events harder targets, we might have people who take advantage of not just the kindness and the trust that they feel for society writ large, but also their ability to gain notoriety and fame as they take their own lives. And really at the root of this is a mental health crisis, in that all of these individuals are feeling like they no longer want to live their lives. And if that were able to be arrested, if we were able to embed meaning and purpose and provide a little bit more hope in the mix for individuals, no matter what their mental health background, this proneness to desiring to take their own life would be reduced in society and the public as a whole, and that would lead to less of these mass events, less of these terrible events, and less of these cowards doing these things in public just to gain infamy on their way out.
Narcissism, extreme personality disorders. The gunman's daughter has told reporters he quote, has mental health issues and was very sick. He shot my family and he's dead now. The guy has mental health problems. Gee, you don't say. Of course he does. Now, here's the question for all of the libs and all the people who are open-minded, so open-minded that their brains fall out on the trans issue. What are his mental problems? What are they? Did he just have a little OCD? Did he just have, a touch of depression? What are the mental problems? The mental problem is the trans identity. That's the problem, right?
Just as a point of background from the therapeutic industry itself, in 2013, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual's version 5 changed gender identity disorder, which used to be, obviously categorized as a specific disorder, to gender dysphoria, which meant that you felt discomfort from not being the sex that you were born as. And so it moved from attempting to destigmatize people who might have had this gender dysphoria or gender identity disorder into gender dysphoria. It left the diagnostic necessity being open that they can make an insurance claim based on a diagnosable disorder, but they just changed the name of it so that they could begin to press it forward in public life, and it would be much more able to be wiggled through in a way that insurance will still pay for it, but also we can change the language, look like we're destigmatizing people, and tell them that yes, it's actually right and correct to affirm that change rather than to refute it, which if you have a disorder, we would not affirm that. But if it's just you feel discomfort because no one's affirming you, or you feel discomfort because you're not the way that you felt like your body should have been created to be, then we can still diagnose it, but we can make it look like we're beating the drum for you. We're actually working to affirm you. And there is no other diagnostic criteria or diagnostic category where I, as a therapist, am told that I'm supposed to just affirm someone's disorder or dysphoria. I have known individuals who had body dysmorphia where they thought that they were actually thinner or fatter or they looked differently than what they were. And it would be literally quite fatal for me to tell them that, yeah, no, in fact, you're right. Let me just affirm that your feelings about your body are correct. That is absolutely malpractice. And it should have never been done in this case either. However, that is what the global left-wing liberal world order wanted all the therapists to say. And because it's run by a bunch of socialist commies, the APA and all of the other therapist organizations, the licensing boards, and even, all the mental health nationwide practitioners, they all just had to go along to get along. And so we all ended up having to affirm. It's the only disorder that I'm aware of where the treatment criteria is just to affirm. And that in and of itself ought to tell you everything you need to know about how incorrect this ideology is.
Can we admit that, though? What's the mental health problem? We always say we have a mental health crisis.
So even though the APA, through their diagnostic and statistical manual, sought to affirm these individuals over the course of 2013 until now, we have still yet experienced a great many instances of mass casualty events that have resulted from these folks that might be actually mentally unwell in this area, in this diagnostic criteria area. So starting in 2018, we have Aberdeen, Maryland. I'm only going to read the locations of these because I don't usually want to give the infamy that these people are desiring by the ways that they acted out. In that instance, 3 lives were taken, 3 people were injured. In May of 2019, Highlands Ranch, Colorado, 1 person was unfortunately didn't make it, and 8 were injured. In November, in Colorado Springs, Colorado, where my family used to live, 5 were taken their lives and 19 were injured. In March of 23, this was in Nashville, Tennessee, a school. 6 lives were taken, and then there were other injuries. That one was quite infamous because they didn't release the name or identity of the person who perpetrated for quite a while because they were trying to protect the perpetrator instead of the victims in that case. And then 2025 in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and that was 2 persons where their lives were taken and 21 were injured. And then, of course, February 9th in British Columbia, Canada, 8 lives were taken and at least 6 were injured. And then on top of it, we have, of course, the February 16, 2026, where this individual, Roberta Espinoza, did what they did. We must look at this as a pattern. And I know that it's politically expedient to try to act like we don't recognize patterns anymore, but this seems to me to be a pattern. And as a therapist, again, I am deeply ashamed to work in an industry that plays a direct role in putting these people in the position to lean into and affirm something that even just 10 years ago was a disorder. And it turns out, and it looks very much like, the affirmation is not improving circumstances. It's not improving outcomes. And I think that the WPATH files revealed very intricately how this ideological group, this activist group, brought about the changes in the therapeutic industry. And then they sort of circularly always just referred back to themselves and cited themselves as saying, well, the WHO says it because we said it. And since the WHO says that this is the right move, then it must be the right move. And then the WHO would cite another major board like the APA, and they all just cited each other, who really was just citing WPATH, which was a group of activists that brought about these changes in the therapeutic and even the medical industries. And it doesn't look like it's going well, guys. It does not look like the outcomes have improved. It doesn't look like we have improved the lives of these individuals that they have attempted to treat in this affirming way. And of course, these are just anecdotal evidences, but even with the loss of Charlie Kirk, it appears that this activist group has taken their institutional strength, said that that was not enough. It's time to go outside of the institutions and begin to make our own way. And they've done that through a great many instances of violence. And this is sad. And I'm, again, just deeply saddened as these continue to happen. I'm sad for the individuals who were caught up in this medical system and may have been victims of this ideology because their medical providers and all that even told them that it was okay. We learned of the detransitioner who won a $2 million settlement from their therapist and their doctor last week. And so at least if I were in a position where I had been affirmed into doing something drastic and I felt like it was the wrong thing to do, Just sue the bejesus out of everyone who did that to you. Do not take it out on someone else. There is hope. Your life could get better. And there ultimately is a hope in the God who created you wants a relationship with you. And I know all of that is the farthest flung idea that anyone in that position wanted to hear. But it's time for us to hit the reset button on affirming this ideology. And somebody come prove to me that it worked. Somebody come prove to me that the numbers are better, that the outcomes are better, that all of the affirmation that everyone bent over backwards to do has resulted in positive outcomes. And then that wouldn't, even if it were 10 million times better for these individuals since having all these surgeries and everything, it still wouldn't mean that it were true. It still wouldn't mean that the Bible doesn't have a better premise for what is a thriving life than does the APA, and by the way, an APA ideology that's only 12 years old. Give me a break. Give me a break. I'm ashamed of my counterparts in this industry, and I'm ashamed that it has gone this far. Let's hit the reset button and try to get back to our humanity.